we're talking to spirited women. Do you want to tell us your names and introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah. My name is Sammi Katz.
And I'm Olivia McGiff.
And we are a creative duo who make illustrated works about cocktails.
Yeah.
I'm a bartender by trade, cocktail writer, spirit enthusiast. I started bartending about 10 years ago, all in cocktail bars in New York. And Olivia and I published our first book called Cocktails in Color in 2023 and just came out with Spirited Women.
And I'm an illustrator and designer and also cocktail enthusiast, but from the other side of the bar. So Sammi and I met in college doing student theater and were trauma bonded from that. Did not continue to do theater after graduating, but wanted to figure out a way to continue working with each other. So creating illustrated work about cocktails to just make them all feel fun and accessible was a way for us to continue working with each other.
Yeah. And like a good friend, every bar I worked at, Olivia would always come and sit at the bar and ask for receipt paper and then sketch my cocktails on receipt paper. And so that was kind of the origin of us making work and collaborating like this. Yeah.
Do you want to both tell us a little bit about kind of your personal origin stories in the drink space?
Yeah. Well, we both graduated from college and moved to New York with the intention of doing theater. I was trying to be an actor. Initially, I thought I was going to be a yoga instructor on the side of being an actor because I was very much like, oh, I will not wait tables. I'll not be that cliche waiter-actor combination.
Just went to the other cliche of being actor bartender.
Yeah, it turns out being a yoga instructor is also really challenging and doesn't make you a lot of money. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out another plan. And I always loved cooking, but didn't want to commit to like going to culinary school or anything that felt honestly too challenging for my 22-year-old brain. So I was like, oh, bartending feels like an easy thing to get into. It's just cooking with liquid, I guess. So that's kind of how I found myself in that path. And I started working at a really terrible bar on the Lower East Side. Olivia can attest to how bad it was.
Yeah, it was not great.
But then that job led to another, and until I found myself at this cocktail bar called Bathtub Gin in the Meatpacking District of Manhattan. It was the first time that I worked with a lot of career bartenders and realized that I was like, oh, you could actually spend your whole career doing this, and that's cool and creative and fun, and you get to work with a lot of amazing people and meet interesting people. And so I kind of found myself drifting away from theater and acting and more into the cocktail space. That's kind of how I got my origin in bartending and creating my own cocktails as well.
Yeah. I had two fleeting months as a bartender when Sammi first started. I also was pursuing theater and started doing some of my own illustration and design work on the side. But bartending sounded like, oh, that could work. So I did 2 months where we worked at the same bar.
Yeah. Neither of us should have been hired there.
No.
We're not very good.
Rooftop bar overlooking all of Central Park. So it was beautiful and felt very kind of swank and exciting. And it was a hotel bar, so you meet all different kinds of people. But at the time I was also teaching kindergarten art classes. So having to have late nights at the bar and then go to school in the morning just didn't really work out. So I left, that was really my only
honestly
foray into bartending.
Drunk people and kindergartners are like very similar.
Yeah, it was very similar. It was an all boys school, so it was, it was boisterous, as was the bar. So, but Sammi stayed in bartending, and as you mentioned, I would always visit her at the bar, and my experience with the industry is very much on the other side of the bar, visiting and hanging out, and I think I learned so much about spirits and different cocktails by having a buddy on the other side and feeling comfortable to ask questions about, like, what is this and how is this different than this cocktail? And if I'm not sure if I like whiskey, what cocktail should I try to, dip my toe in? So I think our collaboration in book writing really also came from this idea of, if you had a bartender friend who you could ask all these questions of, you'll be able to learn so much more than just trying to find it out on your own. So that's really the tone of our first book, Cocktails in Color. It's very much your bartender friend helping you along the way. And the illustrations really also help invite you in and make it not feel too intimidating, but also there's plenty of information
Yeah,
to be learned.
the idea of that book really started from like cocktails and bars and cocktail bars specifically shouldn't feel like intimidating places where it's like you have to know something or you have to like know insider information in order to feel comfortable there. Actually, you shouldn't feel like you have to know somebody. So we want to take the approach of making cocktails feel accessible and colorful and joyful, and really the more we kind of looked at other cocktail books around, it was like everything felt very stark and serious with like dim lighting, with like a single glass stemware with like the zest misting over the top, and everything was like,
which they're beautiful books, but they
Gorgeous.
didn't make me feel like I could make those drinks.
And also didn't reflect my philosophy about making a drink, which is like, if you make it and it's not very good, you get to make another one. It's just a drink. Like, it's not, if you don't have this one specific ingredient, the world is going to end, you know? So we really wanted to
lower the stakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back to theater. We're just lowering the stakes.
Yeah.
Bartending and cocktails. Is there something with theatre as well, that sort of acting, did that draw you to it?
Totally. I think there are a lot of similarities between bartending and being an actor, or being on stage performing in some capacity, because you are performing as a bartender. That's your stage. You're welcoming people in. You have control in terms of like, you know, working with your staff is like working with a cast. You pick up where someone else drops the ball. You help each other out. A lot of improv, a lot of fixing things on the fly and having to pretend that everything is okay. So I think there are a lot of crossovers that I was drawn to for sure.
I think also the form of both really requires you to hone your storytelling. Like theater, you only have that audience for maybe 2 hours sitting in the seat in front of you. So you really need to make sure that you're using every moment to get your story across. And cocktails are the same. You have one drink to invite someone in. You have maybe 4 or 5, hopefully not too many ingredients, you know, like to tell your story. And I think one thing that I really appreciate about Sammi's cocktailing is that it isn't too fussy, for lack of a better word. It is very, the recipes in both Spirited Women and Cocktails in Color are very home bartender friendly. And so, you know, each ingredient has to be telling a story, and they all come together to tell one cohesive story that's well balanced and hopefully invites you to get another drink.
That's good. Did you want to tell us a little bit about how Spirited Women came about? What is it? And who do you want to read it? Basically, who's it for?
Great questions. Yeah, I mean, so we pitched the idea of Cocktails in Color to first our agent, then pitched it to publishers. So we didn't have the idea for Spirited Women in mind until it had time to grow, because we were able to sign a 2-book deal with our publisher. So we did Cocktails in Color, but all the while knowing that there would be a second book coming down, which was really, really fortunate. So it gave us a lot of time to think about what we really wanted to do, and also working on a book at the same time while thinking about what your next book would want to be. Would be like, okay, this is a lot of work. Like, we're going to have to we're doing another one for sure. So we got to do something we really care about.
Yeah.
Something we really want to put all of our energy and passion into.
Yeah, it takes a lot of your soul, time, love to put a book together. It's a long process. And so I think we learned that it needed to be something that we're really passionate about sharing. And so Spirited Women is a cocktails and profile recipe book that features 55 women around the world who work in spirits today. So the women that we interviewed range from cocktail creators to bar owners to distillers to CEOs of brands.
And feature spirits from all around the world too. So we've got Ogogoro from Nigeria and Shochu from Japan and Pisco in Peru. We really tried to make a global book that would express the breadth of the women all over the globe who are making spirits.
Yeah. I think that there is why we wanted to make Spirited Women. There is a decent amount of history out there and writing about the impact of women in the spirits industry historically and what they've contributed to the industry. But we found that there wasn't much documentation or a book that was out there that was featuring living women in the industry, and realizing that a lot of the stories of the women that we had met were just as exciting and just as important to the spirits industry and to like the history of liquor. So I think we were excited about talking to women who were working in the industry today, and I think the book is to honor them, but it's also to you're asking, who do you want to have this book? Who do you want to read it? I think it's not just for the industry. I think it's also to show the people on the other side of the bar, or in their homes or whatever, that spirits is not necessarily a gendered thing at all. That cocktails are not gendered. That a Manhattan or a martini or an old fashioned has no gender.
Yeah, the fact that we even have to say that still shows that there is a long way to go. So we've come a long way, obviously, but there is still a very long way to go in terms of the outdated stereotypes that are held a lot, both behind the bar and on the other side of the bar, about who drinks what, who is able to do what, that those things are not gendered, and in fact there are lots of women clearly all around the world who are drinking these things and also making these things and starting companies, and
it's inspiring to hear those stories.
Absolutely.
I think also coming from the States, when we were starting to do some of that research of how recent some of that history was of women not being able to open their own bar tab without their husband or father's consent, not being able to work in a bar or step foot in a bar, is really, really recent.
Yeah.
And so sharing these stories with joy and celebration is really important.
Yeah.
I don't have any daughters, but I have a couple of nieces, and that's the kind of stuff that I want them to know about.
Yeah.
And, so for me, that's really important.
Yeah.
Because often the stories of women are not told.
Right.
Except by women to other women. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So which women's story completely surprised you? Is there someone that you hadn't expected to include, maybe, who blew past your expectation and you just had to include them?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Honestly, I mean, every woman surprised us in a certain way, just because all their stories are so different. I think before starting this project, I was a little like, not that I thought I would be bored by any means, but wondering, it's like, okay, will the narratives feel different? You're doing 45 profiles. It's like, will the narratives be different? Like, will I be starting every profile with, she never thought she wanted to be a distiller? Like, it was a little like, ooh, but really that never happened, just because everyone had their own unique path to finding it. So that's kind of like my like larger answer. But I think individually, is there anyone that you want to shout out? I have a couple, but yeah.
I mean, I think it was exciting to meet women who didn't have a history in the industry and wanted to just jump in full force and create something. It was also really exciting to talk to women who had a family history of being, in distilling or in bar owning or whatever it was. And we have several women in the book who took over from the patriarch in their family, the family business that had been going for
like
decades and generations. And so, I think hearing their stories of both truly deeply loving the tradition of what their family had created, while also wanting to bring it into the 21st century and, figuring out how to make it all more accessible and for everyone. Thinking of like Romina and Selena.
Yeah.
That was really inspiring, because I think with the structure of the book is both current stories and also every once in a while looking back at the history and why these stories are important. And so I think figuring out how to hold both of those things together was inspiring to me.
Yeah. I think the one woman in the book, or two really, that were like, oh my God, I can't believe we got to talk to her, was Dr. Joy Spence from Appleton, who was the first female master blender of any spirit in the world.
Ever.
Like, she is a true legend. And so
Yeah.
the fact that, like, it was like, you got 25 minutes to talk to Joy. I was like, oh my God, what did I talk to Dr. Spence about? Like, and then the other is also another legend in the industry, Leslie Gracie, who is the master distiller of Hendrick's, who actually created Hendrick's. Nobody knows that Hendrick's was created by a woman who, is in her 70s. She's Scottish, and she has hair like all the way down to her butt, and she gets inspiration by walking her dog in the Scottish gardens. Like, that's incredible.
So dreamy. Yeah.
So really, those were the two. I was like, I can't believe we're so lucky to be able to speak with them.
Yeah. It was exciting to talk to a real, also breadth of ages and generations of women. Just reiterating that women have been in the industry forever. But seeing that and seeing some of the younger brands of, women in their late 20s who decided to take over their family business or to start a new path.
Completely pivoted their careers during COVID. Like, we talked to a few like that who were doing something entirely different, and then COVID happened, and they're like, okay, I think I want to do something else, like start a bar, start a spirits company. And they're all super inspiring, just in totally different ways. Yeah.
Cool. So, leading on from that question to the next one is, were there any stories that you wanted to include but you couldn't for some reason?
There was a woman that we spoke to actually in the beginning of our interview process who unfortunately we couldn't include because her distillery closed. So her name was Maria Estrada, and she was making a rice whiskey in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. But her distillery was also like a motorcycle shop.
It was so cool.
It was called Moto Spirits. And, because we are Brooklyn local, we got to go to her distillery and visit her and talk to her and taste the spirits and see the motorcycle. Like, the whole thing just felt very, very cool. And it wasn't that long after we talked to her, it was maybe only a couple of months, where they announced that the distillery had to close. So unfortunately, we weren't able to include her just for that. Books have such a long lead time that if we knew that we weren't going to be able to, if someone was not going to be able to buy that product a year and a half from then, we wouldn't be able to include her.
Yeah, and I think that was we had conducted that interview in 2022, and so I think they were coming out of the pandemic and really reckoning about can we keep this up and how sustainable is this. But I was so excited to do the illustrations for that one because the distillery was just so cool with all of these vintage motorcycles, and the storytelling that they did was exciting. And I'm excited to see what she does next.
Me too.
Sounds cool. So let's flip it and talk about the fact that the book spans the globe. So let's talk about places now. And tell me, was there a particular region or country that surprised you when it comes to women-led distilling or bar cultures, like something that you didn't expect to find in a particular destination or place?
Yeah. You mentioned her briefly, but there's a woman named Selena Nishihira who is the master distiller and CEO of her family's company Nishihira Distillery, in the Amami Islands of Japan. So a remote island where they make shochu from this very specific brown sugar that you can only find on that island. And that is something that I knew about shochu from being a bartender, but never got to really learn about, like, a specific type made from this one type of brown sugar. And so speaking with her, also the interview with her was entirely in Japanese. So we had a translator, and she was just like so lovely. But her voice to us was coming through like a white Australian man. And so there would be times where, like, she would just be like talking incredibly serenely, and then the lovely translator would be like, yes, and then I banned my father from the distillery. And be like, what's happening? And so learning about
she was getting too nervous about how she was changing things, and she was like, get out of here.
Right, because she had taken over from her father. And so just getting to speak with her and learning about her distillery and her I mean, that is something that's so different than anything I had experienced, certainly in the U.S.
And in terms of drinking culture, like when her father had been in charge of the distillery, the tradition around drinking shochu was much more kind of traditional and serious, and she wanted to take it more casual and friendly, and so the spirit that we featured in the book is her first expression when she took over the distillery, and it's a much more kind of like playful, easy drinking, just with the bottling alone and the flavor profile and everything. So it was exciting to see that in terms of the drinking culture, she was actively trying to like open it up.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Mm.
I kind of want to ask another question that's not on the list now. Was there a country that you wanted to include that you couldn't?
Because we wanted it to be global, we definitely, I think when we started the process, we had a long list of women that we wanted to include. And then as we started getting towards like the last 5 women, we were trying to, fill some gaps and make sure that we were really looking at a global perspective. And we didn't have anyone from the Middle East. And, I think it was hard to find women working in spirits who were either owners or outwardly like imbibing in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting to find Jess, who is the co-founder of Farida Rock.
Yeah. They're based in Beirut. And like Jess, along with her husband, started in Iraq again post-COVID.
Yeah.
And getting to speak with her about the culture of drinking rock in Lebanon, but also women being involved in the making of the spirits too, was very cool, and felt their approach on it is very modern. So we were really happy that we were able to find her and know that there are women everywhere really who were making spirits. Was really, really cool.
But it was hard to find kind of any other countries in that area that we could find women in.
Yeah. Were there any differences in how women navigate the spirit world in different parts of the country, different parts of the world?
Mm-hmm.
And did anything stand out to you guys? Like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I think generally speaking with women who were in Mexico was really interesting because Mexican spirits have a really deep history of like the patriarch running and making this stuff. But then in speaking with women who have been doing it for a long time, they're like, no, women have been making this stuff. They just haven't been getting any of the credit for it. And speaking to them and finding that they've are also currently in modern day are having to be like, no, hi, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
While like dealing with, distributors or glassmakers or whoever constantly have. And I heard this from several women who worked in Mexico being like, no, it's me.
You give the invoice to me.
That was particular, not that didn't happen elsewhere, but that felt it showed up in every woman who's based in Mexico.
But I think in kind of response to that, it meant that a lot of those women that we interviewed in Mexico had made it very much part of their mission statement to only hire women. Like the Yola Mezcal is a beautiful mezcal that the entire distillery is run by women from top to bottom. And that is very much part of their mission statement. And so, I think that was very, very much part of Yola's storytelling,
Definitely.
But I think it was also in response to how that history has played out in Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this research is correct, so I'm just going to check with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you talked about the fact that the first distilling tech may have been invented by women. Is that correct? What was the biggest hidden history moment that you guys uncovered in your research?
I think this book called Girly Drinks by Mallory O'Mara was incredibly influential in terms of uncovering the history of women in alcohol.
Yeah.
And we interviewed her for our book and featured her as like a cocktail author because no one had really done that in such a
like dedicated, clear,
and
academic
holistic way.
Yeah.
So she wrote Girly Drinks about women and alcohol, and everything I read in that book was just like, like at the end, it was this big because of all the sticky notes. I think I had sticky notes on every single page. And so it was just kind of like, the more I learned, the more I was like, oh my God, everywhere women were involved for creating the first ale house because they weren't allowed to distill publicly. So they would put a broom outside of there as a symbol of like, you can buy beer here. Like that, it just is the coolest thing.
Yeah. I think partnering that history with also the more recent, like American history and global history of women being allowed in bar spaces, I think there seemed to be a clear similarity between women had always been in these spaces, and only until they started making money at them were those rights taken away or changed. And so, you know, the fact that it was women who were doing the stilling until they really started making money and they started outlawing women from being part of distilling. And, you know, the laws around opening a bar tab with your credit card, women could have ordered drinks beforehand, but these laws started popping up. So I think just because women are in spaces that feel equitable now, it's worth acknowledging that like those things can change and are changing still. And we can learn from history that, you know, women have been in these spaces. This is not new history.
And they should maintain being in these spaces. And in fact, be in charge of these spaces, I think.
Yeah. I remember learning something a little while ago about saloons in the Wild West of America. Apparently they were owned by women and run by women historically, and then all of a sudden
it was like, you're making too much money.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And I was really shocked by that because it's not, you know.
Yeah, you don't learn about it.
Yeah, you don't.
The idea certainly of the idea certainly of the Wild West is like cowboys drinking whiskey in saloons, you know, busting open the doors and be like, "Oh, there's not room for the two of us," and it's like, where's the women?
Yeah.
Oh, running the bar. Cool.
Crazy. Tell me from your perspective as illustrator, telling these stories must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Is there one standout illustration that you think you had the most fun creating, or?
I mean, the book is filled with cocktail illustrations, profiles, and then some spot illustrations throughout to just kind of give each story more color. I think entering the project, knew that I was going to have to do 55 portraits and was like really intimidated by that, especially because we had met all of these women and like we're really inspired by all of these women. So I think doing a lot of the portraiture was exciting and deeply intimidating. And so whenever I would get, you know, a bit too in my head about that, I could always pivot back over to the cocktail illustrations, which are at the root like colorful, joyful, and the attempt is to try to get in all of the raw ingredients, and like the composition of the illustration itself is trying to really embody both the ethos of the drink, but also the ethos of the woman herself. So I had a lot of fun trying to figure out. The fun thing about illustration is that I have complete control over the color story. I don't have to make sure that I get the right glassware or the right background or the right colored, you know, napkin to come in on the side. I can create it. And so I got to basically invent glassware from my brain for each woman's cocktail. And that was really, really fun. And another kind of angle at the storytelling that we were trying to do.
I think also something that you did so brilliantly was, you know, because there's so many different colors in the book, that when choosing like the color story for each profile, you were inspired not only by like the raw ingredients used either in the spirit of the cocktail, but also like the woman's energy.
Yeah.
So like when we were speaking with someone, she was super calming and relaxing and truly made our blood pressure go down. Like, her profile colors are like calming and serene, and flip side of that, if like the interview was like really like punchy and vibrant, like, oh my God, you have so much energy, that the profiles then feel like that in the color. And I think it's just a beautiful way of telling that story as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to come back to talking about the legacy of women in the drink space. Do you think that today's cocktail renaissance is doing enough to honour the legacy of women in the industry, or are we still in the early stages of rewriting that narrative, and what can we do? to try and champion women more?
Yeah, the optimist in me wants to say that it's better, and it is no doubt better than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But the fact that there is still plenty of sexism, again, from being a woman behind the bar, being a woman drinking, the fact that we do have to still have books like this means that there's a long way to go. And so I think that hopefully we're moving in the right direction generally by some companies beginning to now champion the fact that they have women at the helm rather than hiding those women, but actually putting them forward.
I think when telling diverse stories, it's, this doesn't just happen obviously with telling women's stories, but there's a trend of just telling it like the month where it's their history month, and then not telling those stories any other part of the year. And like, yes, our book came out during Women's History Month because that's when it made sense to market the book the most. But I think these stories are evergreen and should be championed all year round. And I think, as someone who's not necessarily in the industry, but is witness to it, it would be exciting to see those stories being told all year round and not just when it's buzzy.
Definitely. And I think from an industry perspective, what to do is hire more women. The fact that I think universally bartenders are 60% female, 40% male, but not in cocktail bars, not in the spaces that are taken seriously in the industry. It's much more kind of like
where there's career bartenders, because there's not as much longevity for women in the industry in these kind of more career settings.
Yeah, for many reasons.
Yeah.
But also, we were talking about a bar show that happened last week that had 200 speakers on the roster and 2 of them were women. Like, that's still happening. Like, that can still change. You can still hire more women, promote more women to in leadership positions. And then I think as a consumer, hopefully our book helps with this, but learning that a product you love is made by a woman, buying it, and then telling people that you love it. So it can be sold in liquor stores and in bars and is, actually successful.
Yeah, investing in women.
Yep, investing in women
across the board.
We just we did a feature on Tennessee whiskey in the last volume of the magazine, and I'm proud to say that it's about the women behind Tennessee whiskey.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to read it.
Such a fascinating story to proceed.
We've got 2 of them in our book. Yeah, we've got Nicole Austin, who is the head distiller at George Nickel, and then Victoria Edie Butler, who's the master blender at Uncle Nearest. Yeah. Both incredible ladies.
Powerhouses. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so if you could have a drink with any woman from the book, past or present, who would it be, and what would you order?
I mean,
I don't know.
All of them, all of the drinks,
one
all
giant
of the women,
cocktail party.
One enormous cocktail party.
I guess I have an immediate answer to this, which we got to do as a part of our book tour. We have been traveling and meeting a bunch of the women that we got to interview and visiting their bars. And we got to go to Julia Mimose's bar, Kamiko, in Chicago, US. And her cocktail program is so beautiful. And so getting to actually enjoy the cocktails that she made was, I started laughing and crying. They were so beautiful. The storytelling that she does, both in the cocktails and just also the hospitality and how she's created her bar space, is incredible. So that was really, really special to be able to get to do, and I would love to go back.
Yes, oh my gosh, it's incredible. I think also one of our most memorable interviews was with the Nonino women.
Yeah.
This company in Italy that is run entirely by 3 generations of women. They've been in a family-run business for many, many generations. always with women kind of at the helm of it. And so we got to speak with 3 different generations. And that Zoom room, let me tell you, was wild. There's one, the youngest generation, her name is Francesca. She's the only one who spoke English. So on a Zoom room with her and her aunt and her grandmother, who were both speaking Italian, both gesticulating wildly. And she kept being like, I need to translate, I need to translate. And then we were also drinking grappa at 10
We're doing a
a.m.
grappa tasting with them at 10 a.m. because of the time difference. And it was a blast.
And so I'm kind of like, I want to do that in Italy.
In person.
In person.
And actually meet them.
And actually like get to drink grappa with them.
What was the brand?
Amaro Nonino.
I know. I
Yeah.
met Francesca.
Yeah, she's great.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
Mad.
Yes. Yes.
I
No,
met her at Venice Cocktail Week a couple of years
Oh, of
ago.
course. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
such a beautiful family, such beautiful products, and a hugely inspiring story. But I mean, I would love to take that Zoom room and make it a reality. That was so fun.
Well, you're close.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's true. That's true.
I'm tossing up whether to ask these questions. I'm just going to ask them. Yeah, I'm going to ask. So, you highlight how some cocktails represent more than just flavour.
Mm.
They carry politics, protest, cultural identity. So can you share a recipe from the book maybe that embodies that best for you guys?
I think one that embodies the essence of the spirit brand itself is probably Avalon Calvados, which is made as an entirely sustainable spirits brand. Apples being a hugely sustainable raw material to make a spirit from, the fact that they're trying to use as little water as possible, making refillable kegs for bars. Everything they do in their essence is about reducing waste and being as sustainable as they can be. And so the cocktail that I created for them, I really wanted to harness that ethos. So using the apple as in as many ways as possible. So I made a Manhattan. Is this the Big Apple? Ooh.
We do love a pun.
Using obviously Avalon Calvados as the base, but I also made a poached apple vermouth, which is just poaching apples in vermouth for maybe 20 minutes, straining it out. You can then use those poached apples, eat it with ice cream for dessert later, like save them. They're delicious and boozy and yummy.
Yeah.
But then using also the seeds and the skins and the cores from the apples to make an apple honey. So the drink itself is just the Calvados, the apple vermouth, apple honey, and a couple dashes of Ango.
And zero waste.
And zero waste. Yeah. So that one felt to me like telling the story not only in a delicious cocktail, but also in how the cocktail is created to speak to the ethos of the brand. Yeah.
In what ways have you seen cocktails used as tools of resistance or redefinition in women-led spaces? Have you?
Yeah. You want to talk about Chalky's work? Because that is
Completely.
absolutely. Yeah. So Chalky Tom, who we're actually partnering with on the event later tonight, she's based in London now, but we first met her in Brooklyn, is an Indigenous hospitality advocate. So all of her work is about promoting Indigenous ingredients and uplifting other Indigenous bartenders, and basically highlighting the fact that a lot of these ingredients that we think are native to some countries are actually not, but they're native to somewhere else, and how to best utilize those ingredients in ways that honor actually where they're from and the culture that they were first used in.
And also being really clear in her advocacy work of what ingredients are not acceptable to be using in cocktails, what ingredients are actually sacred. And so I think she does a lot of incredible work to share and educate around how to use ingredients properly, what ingredients to really celebrate and lift up, and in the ethos of the pop-ups that she actually leads, bringing in mentees, bringing in, really like honing her community.
And like creating community in a beautiful way that feels like an act of resistance too. It is fully in opposition to the very kind of like straight white male mustached bartender
Completely.
vibe that is still really persistent in cocktail cities around the world.
One last question from me. Because our magazine is about drink and travel, we always like to ask our interviewees about where they're from and what they would suggest that we do when we come to visit, because we're coming.
Excellent.
I mean, we're both from New York. Sammi was born and raised there. I grew up in Delaware, which is not too far, and then moved to New York after college. And I mean, I think taking like locals' suggestions of where they go and taking bartenders' suggestions of where they go is obviously the best way to experience bars in the city. Do you have any in New York that you would, specifically?
Like specific bars? I mean, I think your advice of almost like going on a bar crawl based on where a bartender tells you to go is like usually the best way.
Just like daisy chain it?
Yeah. Because I think like most cities that have kind of this like cocktail recognition, certainly London is one of them. It's like you do any research of like best cocktail bars and it's like you'll get maybe the same lists over and over, but it's like you talk to somebody who lives and works in that city, they're going to give you like a hidden gem that you're not going to find on any list. And I find that, the list places are beautiful and fun and great. But they're not the like,
it's like where the
locals.
bartender's going to go after their shift.
Yeah. So we have plenty of those in New York too that feel a little bit more, not quite underground, although they might be underground. There's a lot of basement bars. That are just kind of like special locals. But
so what about like for you guys specifically, like you're from Brooklyn, so is there any like local haunts that you would recommend for us to check out?
I live right near a place called the Long Island Bar, which I love. It's like a very kind of classic old school, almost like diner vibes, like that like wood panel and all that kind of stuff, with like just kind of the surliest bartenders. I say that with love. The surliest bartenders behind that bar who've been there, since it opened.
If you want to swing in the different direction though, of not surly bartenders, Grand Army Bar is an amazing bar that's also in Brooklyn, similar neighborhood, but has a really just like fun crew behind the bar and running it.
They do themed menus. Themed menus like twice a year. The most recent menu was astrology, so each drink was a different zodiac sign. But they've also done like Spice Girls. They've done Cats, not the musical, just Cats.
Good distinction.
So they're just like such a fun time with like absolutely delicious drinks and a rockin' staff.
The ladies behind that bar are just like the most welcoming, sweet, fun ladies.
Cool.
And where can we buy the book?
Good question. You can buy the book online. In the UK, I'm not sure which bookstores would sell it, but we do know that Stoke Newington bookstore in this area has it.
Queen's Park Bookshop also has a bunch. We just signed a bunch there. But yeah, pretty much anywhere books are sold for the most part, but also if your bookstore doesn't have it, ask for it. That's the best way to get like smaller books into any bookstore is for consumers to go in and ask for them.
We love the independent bookstores.
Exactly.
So I think bookshop.org, I think there's a UK version, also is an online bookseller that basically you can buy books from any independent bookseller through bookshop.org.
And what's next?
A bit of sleep first.
And I was going to say drinking, but we've been doing that, but maybe not work-related drinking.
I think Sammi and I have been working on our 2 cocktail books for the past 5 years straight. And so I think Spirited Women, it gave us the opportunity to learn about a lot of regional spirits because we wanted to make it global. And so I think we're really excited about diving more into that and working on some more like mid-form, long-form projects that are centering around regional spirits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Check out Spirited Women.
Okay.